Senza allora,
Ma non lo so, Alex, sicuro no. Qua, ma i cavaletti con i nomi non ci sono. I cavalieri.
ce l'ha una rosa.
Guarda.
Non ho capito, è arrivata dopo. Perché gli altri
Ma non di fatto.
sei uscito con Giuseppe, poi l'avete trovata tu.
Dopo il...
Parla adesso, dopo... No, prima
Ma c'è questo problema che non ce lo fa. Non so come... Che cazzo?
Edoardo, buongiorno.
Sì, ma non posso da sera.
Però, Edoardo, mi senti? Edoardo, Edoardo, mi senti? Edoardo?
Vuoi Renato?
Mi senti, Edoardo?
Sì, ti sento, ti sento.
Mi vedi pure? Mi vedi?
Sì, sì, ti
Ok.
vedo.
Avete caricato le cose da condividere?
Aspetta. Ok, parla.
Ho detto avete caricato le cose da condividere.
Non si sente niente. Vai.
Mi senti adesso?
Sì, ti sento.
Ma perché non si sente più nelle casse?
No, mo si sente nelle carte.
Ah, ok, perfetto, va bene. Ok.
L'unica cosa, mo c'è un problema che dietro, guarda dietro, non proietta
Eh,
in cioè da solamente il desktop senza proiettare niente.
aspetta. Vediamo un attimo se posso fare io qualcosa da qua.
Eh, That's gonna aiuto. There's a little problem with yeah, with the screen. Uh, yeah, I can fix this, but the person who prepare all the meat can can fix. Yeah. I don't know, but because we don't know how to block this. No, no, there's in meet. It's online. Yeah. 10 minutes. Ah, ok. Ok, mo va. Grandissimo. Ok, ha fatto tutto. Yeah. Ok.
Ok.
Sì, ok. Allora, chi deve parlare si deve mettere sempre qua. Ok.
So what I should suggest is that we will start immediately. We are a little bit running out of time, and we have so many issues to debate and to talk with each other. So let's be very thankful for this morning Holy Mass. It was again the best opener you can imagine for a critical reading. Yes. And thank you so much, Eminency, for your homily. It was quite inspiring indeed. You went to the very core of the message. Thank you so much. Highly appreciated. So we are Catholics, and that means we will cherish the universal dimension, universality. The previous Pope Francis, also mentioned quite early that that means that we have to give room for local churches, for he called it sub churches, or in full communion with Rome. Rome, the place where we Africans, Asians, Latin Americans, and those from the Western world are meeting each other in full communion in Rome. That was exactly what we did yesterday. Focus on local targets, local challenges of Catholic schools, of Catholic teachers, of churches in so many countries. So, as you know, we did our very best to embrace the global south in this conference yesterday and the day before and today in all evidence. And we had a huge chance to rely on cooperation, and I will be able to give a very short introduction to that with the International Foundation for Religion and Society, with the Institute for African Compact on Education, and of course also of the Educational and Policy Association and Umec, World Union of Catholic Teachers, but also with Italian. So I teach in my classes quite often on the principle of subsidiarity. Wow, that's a very exciting term. It's a legal term, it's a moral, ethical, philosophical, so it's a wide variety of notions in that one word, subsidiarity. So we are so happy to have this best cooperation with the Italian Association of Catholic Teachers, who took the lead for this conference in a very professional and very authoritative way. Thank you so much, Esther, to be with us and to take the co-lead of this conference. You have the floor. Yeah.
Buongiorno a tutti. Io parlerò in italiano, Presidente, ma c'è la traduzione poi in inglese, perché abbiamo presenti anche l'Associazione Italiana Maestri Cattolici e non tutti poi possono comprenderci, ma abbiamo Alexis che tradurrà in inglese. Ecco, cari amici, autorità, educatori, autorevoli relatori, sorelle e fratelli nel servizio educativo, per me è motivo di profonda gioia e gratitudine trovarmi qui oggi in questa importante conferenza dell'Unione Mondiale degli Educatori Cattolici. Noi condividiamo una vocazione comune, essere segno di speranza e strumenti di crescita per le nuove generazioni alla luce del Vangelo e del Magistero della Chiesa.
Dear colleagues, dear friends, distinguished guests, educators, brothers and sisters in the service of education, it is for me a profound joy and a source of gratitude to be here today in this important gathering of the World Union of Catholic Educators. We share a common vocation to be signs of hope and instruments of growth for the new generations, enlightened by the gospel and by the magisterium of the church.
Il titolo che ci guiderà oggi in questa conferenza, il docente cattolico, innovatore, guida, generatore di benessere e io aggiungerei anche di bellezza, ci interpella in modo profondo. La dichiarazione conciliare, Gravissimum Educationis del 1965, documento profetico, ma ancora attualissimo, come abbiamo visto, come ci ricorda che l'educazione è un diritto fondamentale e universale e che ogni persona ha diritto ad una formazione integrale capace di armonizzare dimensione intellettuale, morale e spirituale.
The theme that inspires our reflection the Catholic teacher today in the light of Gravissimo Education. The innovator guide and the generator of well-being challenges us deeply. The Consigliere Declaration, Gravissimo Educationis, promulgated in 1965, remains a prophetic and relevant document. It reminds us that education is a fundamental and universal right, and that every person has the right to a formation that is fully integral, harmonizing the intellectual, moral, and spiritual dimensions of life.
Oggi, in un tempo attraversato da cambiamenti culturali, sociali, tecnologici molto rapidi, noi docenti cattolici siamo chiamati a rinnovare la nostra missione, essere innovatori, guida e generatori di benessere e di bellezza. Ma innovare per noi educatori cattolici non significa semplicemente, come ci ha ricordato anche Papa Leone, introdurre nuove metodologie o strumenti digitali, seppur importanti, ma siamo chiamati a saper leggere i segni dei tempi alla luce del Vangelo. Ecco, l'innovazione nasce dalla fede ed è capace di creare ponti, non barriere, di favorire un apprendimento che mette al centro la persona, non la performance. Quindi innovatori significa avere il coraggio di sperimentare dei linguaggi nuovi, di accogliere le sfide della contemporaneità con uno sguardo fiducioso e critico insieme. Ecco, docente cattolico innova perché crede che ogni studente racchiude un potenziale unico, un dono di Dio da far fiorire.
Today, in a time marked by rapid cultural, social, and technological change, the Catholic teacher is called to renew his or her mission, to be an innovator, a guide, and a generator of well-being. To innovate for a Catholic teacher does not simply mean to adopt new methods or technologies, though these are important, but to read the signs of the times in the life of the gospel. Innovation inspired by faith builds bridges, not walls. It promotes learning that places a person, not performance, at the center. Being an innovator means having the courage to explore new languages, to face the challenges of our era, with both confidence and discernment. lives. The Catholic teacher innovates because he or she believes that every student carries within a unique potential, a gift from God waiting to flourish.
Come maestri cattolici, ecco, non siamo solo trasmettitori di sapere, ma siamo una guida spirituale umana, testimoni credibili di valori vissuti. E in questo clima di disorientamento che spesso segna i nostri giovani, siamo chiamati a indicare una rotta, non imponendo, ma proponendo, con la forza mite dell'esempio e della coerenza. Ecco, questa guida autentica accompagna, ascolta, incoraggia, è capace di far sentire ogni studente accolto e valorizzato. Come ci ha sempre ricordato anche Papa Francesco, l'educazione è un atto d'amore e dar vita e quindi ogni atto d'amore autentico diventa testimonianza, ecco, del Dio che educa e salva.
The Catholic teacher is not only a transmitter of knowledge, but also spiritual and human guide, the credible witness of lived values. In an age often marked by uncertainty and confusion, teachers are compelled to point the way, not by imposing, but by promoting to the gentle strength of example and with confidence. The true guide accompanies, listens, and encourages. He or she helps every student feel welcomed and valued. As Pope Francis reminds us, education is an act of love, it is giving life. And every genuine act of love becomes a testimony to the God who educates and saves.
In un tempo in cui cresce l'emergenza educativa e il disagio giovanile, noi docenti cattolici siamo chiamati come più volte è stato sottolineato anche da Papa Francesco, ad essere artigiani anche di benessere, a essere generatori di bellezza, ma benessere che non è solo assenza di difficoltà, ma pienezza di senso, armonia interiore, fiducia nella vita.
In a time when educational emergencies and duty threats are increasingly evident, the Catholic teacher is called to be an artisan of well-being. Well-being does not mean merely the absence of problems, but rather the presence of meaning, inner harmony, and confidence in life.
Nella scuola e nella comunità educante i docenti cattolici promuovono relazioni positive, educano all'empatia, alla solidarietà, alla pace e quindi generare benessere significa aiutare ogni bambino, ogni ragazzo, ogni giovane a riconoscersi amato e capace di amare. Questa è veramente la vera rivoluzione educativa.
Within the school and the broader educational community, the Catholic teacher promotes positive relationships and advocates for empathy, solidarity, and peace. To generate well-being means to help every child, adolescent, and young person recognize that they are loved and capable of loving in return. This is a true educational revolution.
Ecco, cari amici, il Presidente poi approfondirà anche il gravissimo Educationis, che ci ricorda che l'educazione cristiana mira a far sì che i battezzati diventino sempre più consapevoli del dono della fede e imparino a testimoniare la speranza che è in loro. Ecco, quindi la missione dei docenti cattolici oggi è proprio questa: unire la competenza professionale alla passione evangelica, coniugare l'innovazione con la tradizione viva della fede ed essere segno di speranza in una scuola e in una società che hanno sete di umanità.
Dear friends, Gravissimo Educationis reminds us that Christian education seeks to ensure that the baptized become ever more aware of the deeds of faith and learn to bear witness to the hope that is in them. This, then, is the mission of the Catholic teacher today, to combine professional competence with evangelical passion, to unite innovation with the living tradition of faith, to be a sign of hope in schools and societies that thirst for humanity.
Come Associazione Italiana Maestri Cattolici ci impegniamo a sostenere, a formare e ad accompagnare ogni educatore in questa splendida, impegnativa e necessaria missione, perché educare oggi come ieri significa credere nell'uomo e credere nell'uomo e credere in Dio che lo ha creato a sua immagine. In un mondo interconnesso il gioco si fa su due tavoli, locale e globale. Il futuro ci impone di imparare a collaborare di più, a crescere insieme e il Papa ci ha ricordato, ci ha parlato di costellazione educativa. Ecco, ogni stella ha una luminosità propria, ma tutti insieme disegnano una rotta. Grazie.
As the Italian Association of Catholic teachers, we renew our commitment to support, train, and accompany every educator in this beautiful, demanding, and essential mission. Because to educate today as yesterday means to believe in humanity, and to believe in humanity is to believe in God, who created each person in His image. Thank you.
Voilà. I was ready to prepare to deliver an opening speech on the complementarity or the non-complementarity of Catholic doctrine and international policy and international law on the role of education, impact of education on the role of the teacher, and on room for pluralism in society, namely the role of Catholic schools. But due to the lack of time, I will drop, be not shocked, drop my opening lecture. If there will be some time I can refer to it in my final conclusions. And you will read it anyway in the book we will co-publish after the conference. We will, when 15 minutes, so let's move immediately to the three keynote speakers. And it's so, I'm so proud and so happy to have this excellent cooperation with Professor Jean-Paul Nguyen on la tête pensante, the person, the really stakeholder on International Foundation of Religions and Society, on the Institute for African Compact. What you did with all your team and with your board is remarkable. Making sure that the Global South is very visible and significant. We lost so much time. We lost decades not to focus definitely much more on Africa and also on the other continents of the Global South. So Jean-Paul, it was just wonderful to work with you and to have this splendid cooperation for quite a long time now. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Your Eminence, Your Excellencies,
Shoot here.
Dear colleagues, dear friends, I'm happy to be here, and I would like to thank all the organizers who kindly associated the Institute for African Compact on Education and the International Foundation for Religions and Society with this important educational and ecclesial event. I thank Professor Jan Dobrov, Mr. Alphonse Numens, must be somewhere, yeah, and Mr. Giovanni Peroni for the quality of their collaboration in the preparation of this conference. Now, I have, first of all, some 4 observations that I would like to share with you about the topic, which is Catholic education, Catholic teacher, state of the art, challenges and opportunity for the future. I begin by those 4 observations. 4. The first one that I would like to share with you is this way to understand Catholic education and Catholic school. 2 elements give rise to a nuance between those themes. We have, first of all, the spiritual and confessional dimension. And the second dimension is what we call instructive dimension. Both constitute what we call Catholic education, Catholic school. There is a difference between, in the history, what we call, for instance, in France, French republicanism, the school which has been defined without the reference about the region. That is the first observation. The second one, it is relating to this document of the Second Vatican Council, Gravissimo Educationis, which emphasizes that for Christian parents, it is better to send their children in Catholic school for their faith. If that is not possible, the document advises to Catholic parents to send their children where they can have a religious education, Christian religious education. That was the second observation. The third one concerns what we call Catholic teachers. And I put them in 3 categories. The first one concerns those religious educators who receive their mission from the church. They give religious education, both in Catholic education and dependently on the legal status in the country, even in the public schools or other schools. But they have the mission from the church. The second category of what we call Catholic teachers are those teachers who are engaged in Catholic schools, because there they can confess, they can live their faith, Christian faith, without problem. They can maybe attend the mass, organize that in school, and so on. But we have also, and I think that is the large number of Catholic teachers. The third category, composed by many Catholics teachers who teach in public schools, private schools, and so on. They are also Catholic teachers. Now, the last observation is about what we call the context. The context, even in the Gravissimo Educationis, there is this way to consider the context where Catholic school is, the country, and so on. And in number 7, they say we have to take care about the circumstances of time and the place. Catholic school in the last centenary, it is not the same in Catholic school today because the society changed. And about the place, Catholic school in Africa, where people are still religious, are very different from the Catholic schools in secularized societies. I would like to invite you to understand my intervention through my double experience. I did many researches in this field of Catholic education in Africa, but also in Europe, especially in Belgium. And I can say that we have to consider, when we are together like this, we have to consider that today we cannot say there is one way to think about Catholic education. There is not one way to think about Catholic teachers. Now, the second point, which I would like to share, which I share with you, is about Catholic school through relations between the church and societies. Now, you know this principle of laicity in French, laicity, the separation between the church and the state. We know that this has influenced many countries due to the colonial influences. For instance, in Africa, because I work with many episcopal conferences in Africa, we will see, for instance, that in Senegal, in Cameroon, and so on, they have this legacy from France. But when we go in the region which were colonized by Belgium, we will see that there is another sort organization of Catholic schools. It is different. And when we go in Mozambique, in Angola, especially when we have this Equatorial Guinea, it is very different because we are still in Africa, we are still related to the ancient colonial system to think about the place of religion in our schools. Now, about this kind of the principle of laicity and the secularization and the link between states and church, we have a point which is very important today for Catholic schools. The first one is to have a pedagogical freedom. The church would like to be free when it teaches. In that case, many dioceses, many religious congregations, especially in Africa, are creating what we call the private schools, private Catholic schools, where they can decide about their program, where they can decide how to organize their school. Because today, in many countries in Africa, for instance, especially, the states are deciding how to teach. I can give you some examples, but maybe it is very important to go far. But there is a problem, another problem. As this in Africa, for instance, we have a large number of young people. More than 65% of people are young. But those states, those governments are still poor. And they don't have enough classroom. They don't have enough teachers. In that case, the church is the way, the institution which can help in developing schools. In many villages in Africa, when you go there, we will see there is, behind the church, there is Catholic schools. I congratulate, for instance, His Excellency here, Bishop Baraga, who decided, I read that every parish has to have a Catholic school. Because if they are not at the Catholic school, what to do with our people? We have to educate them. Now, but in the north, in the south, we have a large number of young people, but in the north, we have this, what we call now, demographic winter. Some schools, Catholic schools and other schools, are closing their doors because there is no young people. Now, how to deal with those problems? Another issue related to the society today is about the pluralism in our Catholic schools. In that case, we have two ways. There are some Catholic schools which are trying to be open because they don't have another choice. In Brussels, for instance, we have many schools where the majority people are from Islam, even Brussels. Now, how can we continue having this Catholic school when our people, the majority, for instance, are from other religions? That is the issue. Another, in this context, there is the option of to engage dialogue. But we have also the second way, which insists on the strong identity, Catholic identity. And unfortunately, this second way is used by some politicians and use it as a foundation of their nationalism. Now, that is a problem. The third point that I share with you is about the mission of the Catholic school and the Catholic teacher. And the title is Serving the Gospel in Our World. Serving the Gospel in our world. Pope Francis' legacy in the field of education is very huge. He assigns to education the mission, which is for me very important, is to say, we are facing many problems in our societies. The problem of brotherhood, the problem of common good, the problem of environment, and so on. And Pope Francis, through this global compact on education, thought that education could be the solution. In that case, the Catholic education receives the mission to propose to educate people who should live better, who should organize our society better in the future. That is the reason why in Africa, as you see, Africa here is well represented. Bishops and other people, scholars, are aware about this force, this power of education. If we want to stop wars, conflicts, and so on, we have to educate in another way, in a new way. And I am very happy to share with you that the Pope Leon has had some points on this global compact on education. And among those 3 points, 2 are already present in African compact on education. The first one, which is already present in African compact on education, is to educate for peace. Because for Africans, it is very important. The second one, which have already mentioned, is about to educate for the internal life, spiritual life. That point is already in African compact on education. And the third, which is, for instance, I think, not new, but it cannot be considered in the same way from Africa and from Europe, is about this digitalization culture. For instance, in Africa, in some cities, this issue has a meaning, but in a village where people are not connected, the problem is it is another problem. For Africa, the problem of this digital culture is addressed, first of all, as a social issue. Because this way of this digitalization, this digital culture, can be a tool of domination. Who is occupying the what we call internet? When we open internet, what are we seeing? Which values is shared, and so on. And I think in the African Catholic schools, our problem is to deal with this issue critically. I am finishing my about the end, and I would like just to mention some challenges. In the South, we have this challenge of make connection between Catholic school and the local context. Because our Catholic schools somehow are still the continuity of colonial system. Now, how to make a link? Yeah. The second one is the lack of sufficient funding. You know, some public schools in Africa are funded by the European Union, but who is funding the Catholic schools? That is the issue. And if those Catholic schools are not funded, it means they need to continue to be managed. And who is going to pay for those schools? It will be the children from families which are in somehow rich. Where is the place of young people from the poor families in our Catholic schools? And this issue has been pointed out by the African Compact on Education. The third challenge is the temptation of elitism, which has a consequence of individualism. The fourth one is the governance of the Catholic school. When we talk about the Catholic schools, who must govern, who must manage this school? The church. Which kind of collaboration? That is the reason why I think we have to develop what I call the theology of Catholic education. The theology. And I point out two two ways, or two ways. The first one, I think there is a pastoral issue. If, for instance, for the reason of funds, we create our Catholic schools and they are managed by priests and sisters in order to have funds and make living our dioceses, our congregation, where is this? Who is going to deal with pastoral community, pastoral care in communities? And when we know that this function, managing a school, lay people can do it. Another question, theological question, I think, is about ecclesiology. How can we, as a church, think about the Catholic education as a church together? And I think Catholic education now is a new space where we can make a sort of implementation of a synodal way. Now, I would like to mention another issue, which maybe I can, thank you very much. I am concluding. Another issue is about, we learned that in Africa, in Catholic schools over the world, 38% of Catholic schools are in Africa, in the world. But when we saw about this instance of governance, of thinking about education, Catholic education, where is the place of Africa? That is the issue. Where is the place of Africa? And now, I conclude with three opportunities, and I end. The first one, Catholic education could be considered as a soul of culture, like a Protestant theologian says, Paul Tillich. Catholic schools has a role to play in developing a fraternal culture in our world. The third one, before the last, it is about in our culture, which is dominated by materialism, individualism, capitalism, tribalism in Africa. Catholic education must be a place where we can develop a dialogue, where we can include those people who are excluded, like this dialogue between Jürgen Habermas and Joseph Ratzinger proposed. The last one. The last one is about democracy. You know, there is a philosopher, Willy Kimilika, maybe some of you know him. He proposed that for democracy, we have to develop different way of thinking. And as Catholics, we must be proud to develop a way of thinking, a way of imagining the world, the society, and to propose that in the public sphere. I thank you. Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Prof. Tom. I couldn't agree more on most of these issues. The church is the first practical provider of non-state rule.
Powerful representation of Catholic schools indeed in Africa. We would love to, you drafted the perfect agenda for the next conference. How should we deal on governance, on church-state relations? Visiting Catholic schools in Africa. pretty surprised and impressed by the authenticity and the diversity of excellent best practices, to be honest, as Catholic schools in Africa. We can learn enormously from those best practices. But talking with political leadership, societal leadership in Africa, there are questions about state responsibility, and of course that's one of my favorites, state responsibility. As you know, the SDG 4, the right Sustainable Development Goal 4, the right to inclusive quality education for all and lifelong learning. By 2030, the right to have universal, primary, compulsory education for all will be fulfilled. Any idea about the year of in which Africa grew for the last businesses? Any idea about how Africa will reach that goal? Should be reached in 2030. For primary education, it will not be before 2085. So it's not just a target, and I'm a critical reader of international parameters, international reports, just to treat the global education monitoring report, as we do in PISA and so on, and things. But still, that monitoring report is worldwide, gives you a perfect insight of which regions in Africa and outside Africa will fulfill those goals. So there is a huge responsibility we should focus on. As we so familiar, you mentioned pluralism, you mentioned secularism, you mentioned the lack of freedom of non-state schools in Europe. We could, and some others could start a workshop on what is the missing room for education freedom in non-state schools. But Islamic schools do know that in Netherlands, what are the best performing schools in the Netherlands? Last ranking systems. Islamic schools. Not Catholic schools. So we should be nuanced. So many other comments to formulate, but that will be for the next time. Yeah, please, Professor, could you take now the floor? Yeah. But also in Umec book, the special academic advisor of the Umec book, and also thankful for your involvement in your book.
Okay, so thank you very much. Your Eminence, Excellencies and friends, it's a joy to be here amongst colleagues from across the world, from the global south to the north, from bustling cities to remote villages, all united by our mission to serve the Church through education. And our theme this morning is Catholic Teachers, State-of-the-Art Challenges and Opportunities for the Future. That invites us to look at where we are as a global family, to be honest about the challenges we face, and to glimpse the hope, if I can get this up. Yep. And to glimpse the hope that God continues to plant among us. So the talk will capture a few of my reflections on these particular areas. And I promise I will keep to 15 minutes. So, first of all, the state of the art. I refer to this as a global mosaic. Catholic education is one of the Church's most beautiful gifts to the world. And despite the teacher shortage crisis, millions of teachers rise each morning to welcome children and young people into classrooms that are not only places of learning, but hopefully places of encounter with Christ. Yet the picture is complex. In many parts of the global south, schools are lifelines. Teachers work in challenging conditions, often with scarce resources, yet with deep faith, joy and commitment. Their courage and creativity are a sign of hope for all of us. In the global north, including my own context in Scotland, the picture looks different. Some of our systems are well resourced, but there is a quiet crisis, not only of identity, but of the spiritual and of the sacred. Secularization has reshaped the cultural landscape, and with it, I would argue, the imagination of our teachers and young people. Fewer teachers, and as a result, even fewer pupils, are formed in the faith. And part of the reason lies in the pressures we face, the relentless demands of external metrics, the obsession with performance, and with the subtle shift towards seeing education as a service for consumers rather than the formation of people and of souls. So amid these forces, it can feel risky for our teachers to speak openly about faith, about vocation, about grace, but that is exactly what makes Catholic education distinctive. Of course, all education seeks to help each person to reach their full potential and contribute to the good of society. But Catholic education and the Catholic teacher aim to do so with Christ at the centre of all that is said and done. Without that centre, we risk being excellent schools, yes, but no longer truly Catholic. So the state of the art in Catholic education is a global mosaic. Different contexts, different struggles, but one shared call to put Christ at the centre. So 2, the challenge, and I'm referring to this as identity and formation. This conference should encourage us to be honest in considering how we are forming Catholic teachers who know Christ, love him, and can witness to him in their classrooms. St. Augustine wrote that Catholic teacher is a medium between the pupil and Christ. And Pope Benedict reminded us, only those who know and love Jesus Christ can introduce their brothers and sisters into a living relationship with him. But the truth is that many of our teachers, our Catholic teachers, do not have that living relationship with Christ. Many are committed, caring professionals, excellent academically, and wonderful role models, but lack many of the resources of spiritual capital and the religious literacy to equip them to give witness to and communicate a distinctively Catholic identity. 15 years ago, my PhD title was Nemo Dat Quod Non Habet, as you see in this t-shirt. You cannot give what you do not possess. How can our teachers give witness to Christ if those called to teach in his name do not truly know him? As a teacher educator for 25 years, I echo what we've heard in Gravissimum Educationis 60 years ago, that teachers are the lifeline of our mission, the very pulse of our schools, the very pulse that keeps our schools alive in Christ. But for that heartbeat to remain strong, teachers must receive sound formation. Without it, the vitality of Catholic education, I believe, falters. And by formation, I refer not only to academic and professional standards, but also to the essential dimension of religious formation that enables teachers to serve as authentic Catholic educators. We talk about the importance of dialogue, an important word, but how can our teachers engage in dialogue if they do not know deeply what it is that they are referring to? I'm convinced that this begins with their own religious education. For many of our teachers, however, the faith formation they receive from their Catholic parents, their first educators, is often lacking. In much of the global north, many parents no longer practice their faith actively, yet still entrust their children to Catholic schools, expecting a Catholic education. And of course, Catholic schools are not just for Catholic children, but the point in this point particularly are for those Catholic teachers still entrusting a Catholic education. But evidence suggests that religious education within Catholic schools is not always given the priority it deserves. The result is that many Catholic teachers, though educated in Catholic schools themselves, possess only a very limited knowledge about and experience of their faith. This, I believe, points to an urgent need to prioritise high-quality religious education within the Catholic curriculum. And indeed, my colleagues at the University of Glasgow, Leonardo Franchi is well known here, and Bob Davis, argue that Catholic schools should go further, assessing many Catholic schools' entire approach to curriculum. They propose that Catholic schools reclaim a distinctive understanding of curriculum rooted in the Catholic intellectual tradition, enabling them to offer an education that is both inclusive and faithful to their mission, echoing Newman's vision of education as the formation of the whole person in truth. They caution that an education system focused primarily on economic outcomes and skills development is narrow and reductionist. When young people experience a strong religious education and a curriculum rooted in Catholic principles, they are in a stronger position then to make informed choices, to dialogue and enter teacher education programmes ready to strengthen our schools with conviction, faith, and a clear sense of their distinctive mission. Of course, this is not easy. The world today is noisy, full of distraction. Bowman called it liquid modernity, a world where anchors of identity and faith are washed away, and where people are urged to be endlessly flexible, constantly reshaping themselves. Yet the Catholic understanding of identity is different. We believe that each of us is made in the image and likeness of God with an eternal destiny. That belief stands firmly against the fluid vision of identity that certainly the Western culture promotes. So our Catholic teachers today navigate powerful cultural currents. Without a sound formation, deep reserves of faith, knowledge and purpose, it can be easy to be carried by society's shifting values. So let's be honest, for many Catholic teachers, formation in the faith remains one of our greatest challenges. The Declaration of the Catholic Teacher, launched this year by the World Union of Catholic Teachers, and you'll have it in your folders, calls us to respond by ensuring every teacher is firmly grounded in faith and committed to ongoing intellectual, professional, and spiritual formation. But this is not a story of despair. This is a story of opportunity. Yes, UNESCO has confirmed we face a global shortage of teachers, real, urgent, and deeply felt by so many of our nations. In the global south, many children still wait for someone to stand before them and teach. Yet this shortage reminds us of something powerful. Even in a world dominated by AI and the wonders of technology and all the goods that that can bring, the world still needs teachers. People who will dedicate their lives to forming others' minds, hearts, and soul. For us, this is more than a profession. It's a vocation, a sacred calling. We are charged with revealing the beauty of being a Catholic teacher. Our mission is not simply to inform, but to form, to help our teachers listen to their inner self, We heard Pope Leo speak about this, to find the truth and to encourage us and them to guide, to witness, to inspire. John Sullivan tells us that the Catholic teacher is sacramental, since we send signs to young people about God's presence and care for them. Renewal begins when the teacher's identity is centred on Christ, not on policy, rankings or inspections, but on the gospel. But it also means recognising the value of our Catholic teachers in our own Catholic education systems and rewarding them appropriately. Pope Leo said on Friday, one of the current difficulties in our societies is we no longer know how to value sufficiently the great contribution that teachers and educators make to the community. The largest NGO provider of Catholic schools in the world is the Catholic Church, of schools in the world is the Catholic Church. But many Catholic teachers are put off entering the profession owing to poor pay. And significantly, in some countries, salaries are inferior to teaching in the state and in the non-denominational sector. If we value our teachers and want to recruit to this beautiful profession, then Catholic teachers should receive salaries, benefits and growth opportunities on par with other educators. In this Jubilee Year of Hope, I am coming to the end, the Church's educational mission calls for a renewal on a global scale. The vitality of the Global South reminds us that faith still moves hearts. The resources of the Global North can be used to strengthen formation and support. Together, we must respond to our challenges, not with fear, but with love and with hope. Confident in what Catholic teachers bring to the world, a ministry of hope, as Professor Bart McGettrick referred to it yesterday. I love this phrase. Imagine a future where every Catholic teacher from Glasgow to Ghana, from Manila to Mexico, is supported, valued and formed to see Christ in every child. A world where Catholic schools and other places of academic excellence and spiritual encounter, where pupils are taught to think critically, act justly, and love tenderly. I just want to, for 1 minute, stick with me, I'm just on the last couple of minutes. I am incredibly fortunate to work at, my work is to accompany young people become student teachers in Scotland to become Catholic teachers. And here's a photo of a few of them. And here today in this room, we have 2 Catholic student teachers. They're sitting at the front here and they're contributing. They embody this vocation in their enthusiasm, generosity, and deep and growing faith. We glimpse the future of Catholic education. We are a future alive with hope. To you, and to every other young Catholic teacher beginning this journey across the world, we say simply, thank you, we believe in you, and we stand beside you as you carry this mission forward. We absolutely do. So, to conclude, very, very end, I want to say the University of Glasgow, where I work, is one of the world's leading top 100 universities, recognised across the globe for excellence in research. And while it has Catholic teacher education programmes, it is a secular institution. But every single day, for the 25 years I have worked there, I have had a daily reminder of Christ the unique teacher. Because when the university was founded in 1451, it was born from a vision of the church. Since that day, it has held fast to its motto, and you would have received it on the merchandise you received when you were coming in. Every day I see this motto, Via Veritas Vita, the way, the truth and the life, reminding us that at the heart of all true education, beyond every policy, every classroom, every curriculum, stands one figure, Christ the unique teacher. And Pope Leo told us yesterday, the Lord Jesus is not just one of many teachers, he is the master. Moreover, he is the educator par excellence. He is the reason Catholic education exists. He is the source of our inspiration, our courage, and our hope. He calls us to teach, not only teach, but to witness. So, to finish, in a world that prizes success, he reminds us of service. A culture obsessed with self-definition, he reveals who we truly are. In an age that often forgets truth, he is truth. And so we look to a future with its challenges, its shortages, its uncertainties, its possibilities. We remember the renewal of Catholic educator will not begin with a policy document. It will begin with a person, Christ the teacher. And remember, we do not merely educate for success. We educate for salvation. If we remain Christ-centered, courageous and compassionate, wherever we are in this global mosaic, Catholic education, I believe, will not only survive, it will shine with the kindly light of divine truth guiding us home. Thank you very much.
Always focused on the role of the teacher and for the accomplishment of the mission of Catholic school. If you look at the teacher, no Catholic school, still there are quite impressive events in those days. But in the movement of the 1977, in the final communique of the 50th anniversary of La Mission del Cattolismo Momentum, in the document of 2023, the main focus was on training, formation, on education of the teachers. I'm a critical reader of state responsibilities as a part of my academic societal daily life. But the church responsibility should also be more explicit. Not every let's say, national church or church school or responsible Catholic leader takes precedence on the formation on education of Catholic educators. So we should remind the church that has a massive responsibility on the issue of formation of Catholic teachers themselves.
Sorry if I missed that point. This was the message to the church.
Yeah.
This is exactly the point.
Yeah. So we will agree.
Yeah.
So let's move quickly. So
Okay.
the beginning of may I ask now for you, yeah. Because theology will also take responsibilities in the education of Georgetown. A wonderful campus, such a great campus. Come and visit the Georgetown. And you will be our perfect guide. I still are guiding us now.
Your Eminences, Your Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends. This past week, we celebrated the 60th anniversary of both Revolutionum Educationis, the Declaration on Christian Education, and also Nostra Aetate, the Declaration on the Church's relation to...
You should click at
well, yeah, I just want to look at myself. It's just distracting. It's distracting for me to look at myself.
I know, I hate it, but still,
you listen. The Declaration on Christian Education calls us to develop true education, which it says aims at a formation of human persons which is directed toward their final end, and at the same time towards the good of society of which they are members. Now, it complements Nostra Aetate by acknowledging the pluralism in societies, and also calling for Catholic education to include openness to ecumenism and interreligious dialogue. These two declarations support and develop the call issued in Gaudium et Spes to read the signs of the times and proclaim the gospel appropriately to each context. So I'm going to talk about the American context that I know best in the United States. The context of higher education in the United States today is deeply troubled, and I expect there are similar challenges around the world. Perhaps the greatest all-embracing difficulty is the relentless commercialization of higher education. Both the leaders of contemporary society and many students are interested in higher education primarily to support a technocratic vision of society, seeking education for the goal of profit, power, and prestige. And often this focuses tremendous attention and money on the STEM discipline. A technocratic education then can contribute to growing economic inequality between those profiting from the global economy and those imprisoned in poverty and excluded from opportunities. Pope Francis cogently analyzed the dangers of a technocratic society in Laudato Si and elsewhere. A technocratic program for higher education systematically brackets consideration of the final end of the human person and reduces the good of society to technical and economic progress in pursuit of greater power and prestige, thereby directly rejecting the goals of gravissimum educationis. The rapid development of artificial intelligence and the expectation of artificial superintelligence further complicate this situation, posing serious questions about the future of teaching, research, and evaluating student performance. Financial pressures have caused a number of small Catholic liberal arts colleges to close in the United States in recent years, and more are threatened in the future. Now, a second set of challenges involves violations of social and economic justice, both past and present. At Georgetown and elsewhere, we inherit a troubled history of religious, ethnic, racial, and national discrimination shaped by the conquest of indigenous peoples, racism, slavery, economic exploitation. During our early history, Georgetown Academy, like all the older colleges and universities on the East Coast of the United States, profited from the labor and sale of enslaved persons. In 1838, 272 enslaved persons were sold to preserve the existence of Georgetown Academy. My position that I hold today is made possible by that sale, in part. In 2017, both the president of Georgetown University and the leader of the Society of Jesus in the United States and Canada publicly apologized to the descendants of the enslaved community who worked for Georgetown. The Jesuit and Georgetown leaders committed themselves to raising funds for humanitarian assistance in areas where the descendants live today. Georgetown University belongs to Universities Studying Slavery, an international consortium of universities around the world who historically had a relationship to slavery. This is an ongoing interdisciplinary research project that is transforming our understanding of our history and our present situation. Slavery is like a thread. You pull on it and all kinds of other things come into a different focus. Guided by principles of Catholic social teaching, Georgetown University, like many other educational institutions, seeks to develop respect for diversity, equity, and inclusion in pursuit of restorative justice. These efforts have led directly into a third challenge: government interference. Some months ago, the former interim U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Edward R. Martin Jr., launched an investigation of the curriculum of Georgetown University's law school and publicly threatened never to hire our graduates because of our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. In response, Georgetown University is currently suing the government of the United States for violation of religious liberty of a private Catholic university. This lawsuit is still pending. In recent years, protests on American campuses concerning the conflict in Israel-Palestine have led to some expressions of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. The government of the United States is currently conducting investigations into anti-Semitism in colleges and universities. On July 15th of this year, the acting president of Georgetown University, Robert Groves, testified before the Committee on Education and Workforce of the United States House of Representatives regarding anti-Semitism and related issues. He detailed our long history of promoting interreligious understanding, including hiring chaplains for the Jewish, Islamic, and Dharmic traditions, the latter including Hindus, Buddhists, and Jains. In accordance with contemporary Catholic teaching, we have a university-wide priority on interreligious understanding, which includes my own department's doctoral program on religious pluralism. To address the interrelated challenges of technocracy, historical injustice, government interference, and interreligious bias, Catholic educators need, above all, a vigorous renewal of the vision of a Catholic liberal education informed by the principles of Catholic social teaching and interreligious relations in a global context. Yesterday, our Holy Father, Pope Leo, declared St. John Henry Cardinal Newman to be a doctor of the Catholic Church. Given all the controversies of his lifetime, this turn of events would have probably amazed Newman even more than the decision of Pope Leo XIII to create him a cardinal. And I would like to explore how Newman's wisdom concerning the concrete processes of learning and higher education offers us guidance in our own situation. Because given this whole relentless challenge of technocracy, I think above all, this is what we need, is a renewal of vision. Living from 1801 to 1890, Newman witnessed unprecedented modernization and globalization, with remarkable changes in politics, economics, science, technology, communications, transportation, and also imperialism and colonialism. He went through major changes in his own thinking and religious commitments, converting first to evangelical Calvinist Protestant Christianity, and then to Anglo-Catholicism, and finally entering the Roman Catholic Church. Even though he was at times fiercely criticized, he always defended his integrity at each moment of his intellectual and spiritual journey. In considering the historical development of Christian doctrine, he proposed the famous principle that in a higher world it is otherwise, but here below, to live is to change, and to be perfect is to have changed often. Newman was a careful observer of his own mind. His motto was cor ad cor loquitur. The heart speaks to the heart. In what may be his most fundamental challenge to any technocratic worldview, Newman believed that the heart, the moral and imaginative center of the human person, is the beginning and the end of formal reasoning. Strongly asserting the moral dimension of education, Newman believed that who we are shapes what we see. And so he focused attention on character, personality, and the history of the knower. He knew that formal abstract arguments do not always persuade. In addition to formal explicit reason, Newman believed there is an implicit informal reason that is broader, deeper, and more diffuse, like religious faith. He called this the illative sense. it's in some way related to what Aristotle meant by phronesis. Newman valued poetry as offering a form of wisdom and even mysticism, an intuitive awareness that reality is always more than we can conceptually define. Newman trusted that a true idea, like the idea of the incarnation in Christianity, has a life that is more than any particular expression. This means that an idea is not simply passively accepted, it's an animating force. It inspires action and new applications. Even though people may not grasp the idea completely, it can move them nonetheless. The development of a great idea is a process of testing and exploration, of growth and examination. A truly great idea has the power to change the fabric of social life. In education, Newman stressed the importance of constantly enlarging our minds, seeking new information from unexpected sources to test and develop our understanding of the truth while remaining rooted in fundamental Catholic principles. Newman encouraged the constant integration of new learnings into our received heritage. And this is one of his main gifts. It's an integrative model of thinking. And this is, I think, what we need to incorporate all the benefits of the STEM disciplines into a Catholic vision of education. Newman trusted that there's a universal offer of revelation from God to all persons in and through their cultures. The reception of this offer needs to be carefully discerned, but Newman presupposed that cultures around the world have been shaped by God's gracious presence, even where the gospel has not been explicitly proclaimed. Newman's sensibility offers resources for grounding scientific and technical education in a moral vision of the human person. Also, resources for resisting government interference and for developing the Catholic heritage creatively in very different situations around the world. Pope Francis also offered guidance for addressing these challenges in ways that very much complement Newman. On May 10th, 2024, Pope Francis addressed members of the International Network of Societies for Catholic Theology, known by the acronym INSECT. He invited them and all of us to consider more carefully the global context of Catholic theology today. We cannot understand our societies in isolation from each other. In Ad Theologiam Promovendam, on promoting theology, Pope Francis called for Catholic theologians to develop a sapiential approach to theology inspired by Blessed Antonio Rosmini. I quote Pope Francis. Now, the idea of wisdom holds truth and charity together internally in a solid circle, so that it is impossible to know the truth without practicing charity, because one is in the other, and neither of the two exists outside the other. Therefore, whoever has this truth has with it the charity that fulfills it, and whoever has this charity has the truth fulfilled. So Pope Francis rejects the technocratic model of contemporary universities and calls for an integrated version very much analogous to that of Newman. He tells us scientific reason must broaden its boundaries in the direction of wisdom, so as not to dehumanize and impoverish itself. In this way, theology can contribute to the current debate of rethinking thinking, showing itself to be a true critical knowledge as sapiential knowledge, not abstract and theological, but spiritual, developed on one's knees, pregnant with adoration and prayer, a knowledge that is transcendent and at the same time attentive to the voice of the people. Therefore, popular theology, mercifully addressed to the open wounds of humanity and creation, and within the folds of human history to which it prophesies the hope of an ultimate fulfillment. In what is perhaps his most powerful critique of technocratic education, Pope Francis issued a letter on the role of literature in formation, where he emphasized the value of reading novels and poems as part of one's path to personal maturity. Resonating deeply with the literary sensibility of Newman, Pope Francis tells us literature also proves essential for believers who sincerely seek to enter into dialogue with the culture of their time, or simply with the lives and experiences of other people. How can we reach the core of cultures, ancient and new, if we are unfamiliar with or disregard or dismiss their symbols, messages, artistic expressions, and the stories with which they have captured and evoked their loftiest ideals and aspirations, as well as their deepest sufferings, fears, and passions? So Pope Francis concludes his letter by trusting in the power of the Holy Spirit, animating the great cultural conditions and creations of the world. Thanks to an evangelical discernment of culture, we can recognize the presence of the Spirit in the variety of human experiences, seeing the seeds of the Spirit's presence already planted in the events, sensibilities, desires, and profound yearnings present within hearts and in social, cultural, and spiritual settings. Pope Francis hopes the wisdom born of literature instills in the reader greater perspective, a sense of limits, the ability to value experience over cognitive and critical thinking, and to embrace a poverty that brings extraordinary riches. The voices of Newman and Pope Francis converge in reminding us of the value of the humanities in expressing the breadth and depth of the human experience, and of the need for theologians and for all Catholic educators to be attentive to wisdom wherever it may be found. Thank you.
The main factor in the critical theory are hindering you to fulfill your mission and theology as a very organic vehicle of great thinking, and a crucial role of culture for fulfilling human growth, and that's the Christian vision. Thank you so much again. We have a very short, but still, sometimes I group. We said that the three speakers will talk to the forefront, here, and we are going to the forefront and raise the first question. And we will go into the audience.
Yesterday they were sitting here.
But that is within the thing, I agree. But still, also a bit right.
Want to come here? Yeah.
Thank you so much for the enriching and brilliant presentation this morning. So my first question is, I'll start with a comment. It's taking a maverick like President Trump to teach the world what Catholic identity is by saying that there is a difference indeed between a man and a woman, and that certain persons were not allowed in certain toilets. Now, how can we, as Catholic educators, project the message of Jesus Christ without fear, with bravery? How can we bring back that sense of God into our schools in the Northern Hemisphere, and also in the Southern Hemisphere, where you have some copycats who are actually, derailing from having school assemblies, prayer before meals, preparing students for First Communion, confirmation, confession, Mass. How can we bring back a sense of the divine into our schools, especially now that we have been gifted with a brilliant doctor of the church, Henry J. Newman? Thank you.
The words of the text is the teachers who will realise and bring to fruition the goals of the Catholic school. Some of the things that you mentioned, it is the people themselves, these two young, beautiful insider out. The future of education is in their hands, and it's what we do to support them to understand the faith, to know the faith, and the church's responsibility in ensuring that that can take place, that good formation takes place. But I do have to say, I take exception to suggest that someone like President Trump is someone that we look to for all matters that are hot topics at the moment for solutions. So maybe one or two matters that are important and align very much with the Catholic teaching. People like Trump and of course others, yes, they have their own perspective in this. But to uphold or to continually protect and to suggest that Trump is some kind of voice when he has a range of a range of other areas where he is certainly not upholding Catholic values. So let's not look to an individual just now. Let's look to the real teacher, Jesus Christ, and get our inspiration from him rather than from politicians that are very divisive.
Yeah. Just this comment about what is for me forgotten that the Catholic teacher has also the duty to instruct people not only to deal with this spiritual dimension. And I think that means if we are aware of those two missions, it will be a good way to be protected against manipulation, political manipulation, and so on.
Professor, very short note. Okay, so we have a problem. We are out of time, but Professor Paulson should take the floor and then the crowd because he has to take it. So we have to rely on your commitment and your self-discipline. So we have exactly 10 minutes for coffee. Coming out to the prescription. And you have 10 minutes. Over here.
Ah, hallo. Ja, even nog even met spreken over de stand van zaken, maar ik moet nu eerst mijn ding opzetten. Het moet werken. Ja, 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 is goed. Ja, want het is nu wel. Ja.
Zullen we in teams afspreken, dan bent u op uw gemak.
Volgende week vrijdag het grootste bloedbad, sociaal bloedbad, ooit in de geschiedenis van Vlaams onderwijs. Dat verwacht ik. Daar moeten we over praten. Ik versta niet dat zij niet gewoon zeggen van dit is ongrondwettelijk en dit is het regeerakkoord. Dus no passaran voor eender welk andere verhaal. Maar
We wij met procedures starten, hè? Dat is al het antwoord zijn, hè?
ja. Maar het is nog veel complexer dan dat. Zeg ik wel.
We zullen volgende week zullen we. Ja.
Weet je, ik moet hier wel aangeschreven, geen technisch assistent. Ja. Het is altijd allemaal mee, ja. We moeten flexibiliteit hebben, lijkt er daar van voor. Geen aan deze uittrekken, maar wat gebeurt er aan de straal? Kan ik het niet zo? Geef de stekker eruit. Micro blijft zo aan. Je moet disco pakken dan met een computer. Dat is vals. Nee, ja. Heb je pakken allemaal mee? Nee, ik ga nog met een taxi dan. Het zou dus heel net nu zijn. Hè. Heel net. Ja. Hoe dat het weet, duur aan andere stress moeten. Kijk, projecteer toch al. Ja, even kijken, ik moet dat niet aan vervangen. Dat wordt... Ja. Ik zeggen dat iedereen moet hebben.
I'm in the next restaurant, just trying to find out if things are loaded on.
I have.
My
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I have a flight at 3:30.
You're ready. All right, okay. You want to Australia?
Oh yeah, I've been in Sydney, but not as a professor, only as a tourist.
Never about a month ago.
Oh really? Yeah.
I did vlog of that. I know you're.
Ja, goed hè, mag gaan starten. Drie kwartier mag ik spreken en dan gaan we voor ja. Hey. Nervous therefore I do it,
and the privilege to have media qualified leaders. In one of the things, you will feel that who are the authors of, well, the main authors of Gravissimo Educationistico. You have doctors from Catholic University of Leuven and UCL, theologians, canonists. I'm a canon law myself, but yeah, we have several. And so it was reflecting to some extent the Belgian model of pacification, church state, and the role of right education and choice, school choice, and parental responsibility in education. So Didier Pollevet is one of the co-authors of Vatican Doctrine on Catholic School as the School of the Dialogue. Remember, the Pope yesterday mentioned 7 times diversity and dialogue. Very powerful. So we should start all the way on what does that mean, dialogue. But anyway, that will be. So Didier is with us. He has to take his flight. He has to run away at noon. But 45 minutes, very solid lecture, and then 50 minutes debate. Be prepared for your questions after the conference. Didier, yes, your turn.
The title of my lecture will be Cognitive Belief Styles of Schools and Catholic Schools in Australia.
Is the mic functioning? No. The mic is not functioning. Taking the staff. Okay.
You can see that we will present today for the first time in my research 6 tendencies we have discovered, not of Catholic teachers, but of teachers in Catholic schools. That's the approach we are taking. Two research questions for this lecture. The first question is, how can we understand the belief styles of teachers and principals in Australian Catholic educational system? And you will see it will also apply to other continents. And the second question is, how do belief styles contribute to the Catholic School of Dialogue? I hope to answer these 2 questions. These questions fit within a larger project I'm leading, the so-called EXI project, Enhancing Catholic School Identity, that started 20 years ago in collaboration with the Catholic Education Commission of Victoria in Australia and the Catholic University of Leuven, the Faculty of Theology, in which I'm teaching. And we try in this project for 20 years to assess Catholic identity, and secondly, based on that, to enhance the identity of Catholic schools. It started in Melbourne, and it has become an Australian-wide project, including 16 dioceses in Australia we have contracts with, and other organizations, and 2 universities are also employed in this EXI project. The philosophy is that we start from, of course, coming from Leuven, from the Second Vatican Council teachings. We analyze the contemporary context of detraditionalization, secularization, and pluralization. We have developed a new theological language to talk, to reflect about Catholic school identity. We have created empirical instruments to measure the identity of Catholic schools. And all this is done with the idea to strengthen the Catholic identity of the school, since EXI is a missiological undertaking. To give you an idea, in the last 20 years, we have analyzed, visited, analyzed, made reports of almost 2,500 Catholic schools, mainly in Australia, but also in the USA, in the Philippines, in the Netherlands, in France, in Ireland, in India, in Sweden, and also last year in Zimbabwe. So we have the biggest data collection on Catholic school identity that is available. For this lecture, I will use one of these instruments, the so-called typology, measuring the cognitive belief styles of people in Catholic schools. A very quick introduction in the instrument. So at first place, we measure if people believe in a transcendent reality we call God. Then you have on the horizontal axis from left belief to right disbelief. The second axis measures not what people believe, but how they believe. Do they believe in a literal way? Do they understand religious truth literally? And binary often also, or do they deal with religious truths in a symbolic way, inviting to interpret and to find different layers of meaning in religious truths. Based on these 2 axes, we have 4 different cognitive belief styles. The first is the combination of literal and belief. For example, a literal reading of the Bible. The second position is people who reject literal belief, get outside of religion, become atheistic. We call that external critique in relation to religion. The third position are people who do not believe in God, but who like the symbols of religions and worldviews. They are all relative. We call that relativism. It are just human constructions, and you choose one based on your subjective preferences, and it's a very contingent thing what people believe. Finally, they do not refer to a God position, the one we defend, has left the literal belief, has gone through the critique of religion, knows that there is a diversity of worldviews in this world, but then decides, nevertheless, beyond all the critique, post-critical, I nevertheless decide to confess myself, to direct myself to the God of Jesus Christ, that reveals himself through the symbols, the rituals, the texts of our tradition. And that's what we call post-critical belief. That Paul Ricoeur speaks of the second naivete, not the first critical belief, but the second naivete. From a theological point of view, we think that this is the position we have to defend in Catholic theology. Of course, close to the God of Jesus Christ that reveals himself, as close as possible to the ontological referent of faith, but at the same time also knowing that you cannot cross the line, that you cannot ground God, that you always don't need the tradition, the community, the text to relate yourself in the way to the divine. And that's why we put with that little gap here, the golden dot at this position. So these are the four cognitive belief styles. The first say faith is an infallible truth. Say religious faith is an illusion. The third will say religious faith is a human invention. Critical believers say faith is my divine compass for salvation. That's a fourth theological position. Applying to Bible didactics, literal believers say the Bible is inspired by God in every letter. The atheist will say the Bible is a violent religious fiction from the Bronze Age. The reductivist will say the Bible is like a beautiful fairy tale book, as often happens in Catholic education. We put them next to the fairy tale books. A post-critical believer will say the Bible is a book of traces that lead us to God. Four different cognitive belief styles. A Catholic school, in my understanding, will develop these fields and will offer symbols, rituals, a community that invites people to encounter the living God that reveals God's self in the midst of that school. And that brings me to my definition, working definition of a Catholic school.
What is the true offense of a Catholic school? A Catholic school is an inclusive learning community. First and foremost, it is a school, not a church. So the focus is on education and learning. It is inclusive, which means that everyone is welcome. Nobody is excluded, as long as they are willing to enter into dialogue. Non-Christians and non-believers are welcome too. Not everyone has to be or become Catholic. It is not a closed community, but an open space of meanings and relationships. A hermeneutical faith that allows all community members to take meaning in dialogue with one another and with the Catholic tradition. It is characterized by freedom, receptivity, creativity, and openness to transcendence. In Catholic school, mediations such as stories, symbols, rituals, and values are offered and animated in a conscious and caring manner. For instance, the Bible, as a book, is given a special place and treated with reverence and care. Through these mediations, all members of the school community are invited and given the opportunity to enter into a living relationship with a transcendent reality we call God, uniquely incarnated in Christ. It is important to note that this is an open invitation, and by no means an imposition. For some community members, this will be through ethics, for others through music, stories, art, or other mediations. This relationship is transformative for both the educational context of the school and the personal development of every community member as a human person. It contributes to the whole person development of all school members and have the capacity. In short, the Catholic school is an inclusive learning community, an open space of meanings and relationships, where mediations such as stories, symbols, rituals, and values are offered and animated in a conscious and caring manner. Through these mediations, all members of the community are invited and given the opportunity to enter into a living relationship with a transcendent reality we call God, uniquely incarnated in Christ. A relationship that is transformative for both the educational context of the school and the total personal development of every community member.
Here's the definition again. The two other scales we use to measure Catholic school identity, for those who know the research, is the Victoria scale, which looks for the Catholic dialogue school. That is different from a Catholic monologue school and a secular colorful school. That's the dialogue school. And the second thing we do is to see how Catholic schools deal with the Catholic tradition. And there we argue for a recontextualization, a renewing of the Catholic school identity as an answer to secularization, and that goes further than only working with values, which is not enough because it leads to secularization. So now to go to this presentation, the sample we have today, to give you an idea, is almost 700,000 people are in our data. And for this presentation, I took out the data of teachers and school leadership of 267 schools and 10 dioceses, 10,000 people, and the data for our e-teachers with and without leadership roles, 8,000 respondents of almost 600 schools and 10 dioceses, and would like to see what kind of trends exist among these teachers in Catholic schools. Before entering into that analysis, I like to draw an attention to one more strange thing we see in the data. So these are the data of the school staff on the left and the students on the right, primary and secondary. And we see indeed that post-critical belief is very strongly developed together with literal belief. We see that also here, post-critical with literal belief. But at the same time, we see also that relativism is very high. So the question I would like to answer today is how it is possible that people at the same time are having literal belief and relativism. And you see the same in these data, it's the same data. You see high literal belief, but in combination with high relativism. And I try to understand this tendency also in this lecture, because it's strange to say that literal belief and relativism have a negative correlation. But if you look here, the negative correlation is very small, and among students, you even see that there is no negative correlation between relativism and literal belief. That also will be a question I also try to address today. Now, let's look now to these 6 tendencies we found in these Australian Catholic schools. So this is very representative, and here you see at a conference 6 different tendencies we found, and I like to present them to you and see how to deal with it and construct a Catholic school identity. We have put even names on it. Literal believers, the tolerant convinced, the mild relativists. These are the 6 tendencies we have found, and I like to present each of them to you, starting with the people, if you look to the left, that are in PCB, post-critical belief. That's this quadrant under the line, close to the golden dots. These are people who have moved into second naivete through theological formation. They incarnate fides quaerens intellectum. They have found a balance between faith and reason. They know that the religious truths are mediated through symbols, through rituals, through sacraments, through scripture. They have deep roots in faith, but at the same time also open hearts, and they are open to being enriched by dialogue with others. These are people who are the director of faculties is asking strong hermeneutical capacities. That's the first group that we discover in Australian Catholic schools. I have asked E to make a picture each time. And that's the picture for PCB made by computer. You see the cross is in the middle. There is a lot of mediation, saints are around the cross. The people are in dialogue, but the windows are open to the walls. That's a good image, I think, well done for post-critical belief. Now, these are data to confirm that we really found empirically this can be overwhelming, but I help you reading, it's not that difficult. So there are 4 blocks: the teacher staff, the school leadership, the RE teachers, and the RE teachers in leadership roles in Australia. And you have to look to the yellow, and then you see that, and a very good result, that 48% leadership is in post-critical belief. It's even higher with our e-teachers and leading roles. 53% is in post-critical belief. The teachers are only 1 and 3. For e-teachers, 38%. So if you look to just one graph here, for example, people with high post-critical belief, critical belief, and so more is to diversity. These people want a dialogue school, not a colorful school, and they want to recontextualize the Catholic school. All these people are 40% along the principles of Catholic schools. My advice for these people is that the best leaders to recontextualize Catholic school identity today, and you see in Australia, the system works very good to select these people to become the principals of the school. They can share their faith. They should be involved in liturgical planning and policy developments. They need ongoing theological training. They can dialogue with the other quadrants, but often they are overwhelmed and burdened because everyone wants them and they have to do everything in the school. So you have also to take care of them because they are gold mines in your school. And the people that are sitting there, they look for a Catholic identity that is at the same time culturally plausible and theologically legitimate. That's typical for post-critical belief. First tendency. The second tendency, if you look here, it goes up, it crosses the line, there's literal belief a bit, but it's also close to the golden dot. I call this but guarded openness. So these people are more cautious in dialogue and interpreting the Catholic tradition. They combine elements of literal and symbolic belief, but generally they return to the literal foundations to find security. They like also dialogue, but dialogue is more charismatic. They use the dialogue as a context to proclaim the faith. It's more a asymmetrical understanding of dialogue that is at work here. So this position we have called guarded openness. That's what AI made it of it. Yeah? So they are in the church, they stay in the church, as you can see, but the doors are opened and they look out. You can go in the church. You can see. Once you're in, it's open, but it's carefully open. It's open to work with. The second tendency, recommendations for this group. First, perhaps the amount of people that school leadership is only 9%. Or e-teachers with leadership role, 6%, or e-teachers, 6%. So 1 in 10, you would say, is in guarded openness. If you look to this pattern, you will see they also have a high post-critical belief. Literal belief that it's positive. They cross the line with literal belief. They like dialogue schools, but they do not resist very much monologue schools. And they like to recontextualize, but also to reconfessionalize the Catholic school. Second tendency, we recommend the group that we provide them with opportunities for analytical dealing with scripture and tradition. These people can use the text to positively offer apostolic theology to balance the prophet. About questions and about uncertainty, and they could be supported to go from a charismatic to a more synodal, I would say, authentic dialogue would be a challenge for that second group. Second tendency. The third tendency are people who are at the top, the literal believers, traditionalist Catholics who see a Catholic school only of Catholics, by Catholics, and for Catholics. They will resist engagement with orthodox views. They will try to preserve the Catholic faith from any cultural shifts. They believe that God and religious truths are accessible directly and literally. They often have limited theological depth and critical self-reflection, and they will resist dialogue, because dialogue from that perspective is rather a dangerous thing to do for this tendency. That's what AI makes from it, a big cross, no hesitation, one truth, no discussion. You see it sometimes in schools, they put a cross and a higher cross and even higher cross, and if they have more higher cross, that's the try to explain your Catholic identity. This topic, this presence is only 5%, 4%, 5%, and 5% of the people in Australian schools have this profile with high post-critical, but also very high literal belief. The dialogue school, they don't want to recontextualize, they want to reconfessionalize it. 95%, and in the development context, you can even also find this tendency to certainly so small actions, this political vision. Tendency number 3 is recommendations here is to focus with these people on historical critical methods of reading the Bible. Try to also invite them in a controlled way into the dialogue. They're often very good at leading critical and fixable, and they should be invited to come from explicit to agency of Catholic school. Critical believers, a small group, but often very vocal, in your school staff or in your boards. This is a new tendency we found. We have discussed a lot how to name it, and we have named it tolerant convince. Tolerant convince. And you see at the drawing, the number 4, they have a combination of literal belief and relativism. And that's the pattern I was looking for in the data to try to understand, and it comes from this group. How does this group work? Or how do they cognitively function? So these are people that are strongly socialized in Catholicism or Christianity from a family or a parish context without much questioning. So the religious understanding is more based on the cultural than on the personal. And so they have never been exposed to critical engagement with their saints. And then they go and out the school context, and they see the diversity, and they tolerant convinced. Very convinced, but they're also tolerant towards the other. You see that, for example, my youth research in India. In India, I see a lot of Catholic students operating on that tolerant convinced. I'll show you the data in a moment. Or, for example, Muslim students in Catholic schools. They are at the same time very convinced of their tradition, but they have learned to be tolerant to the environment in which they live, and they are sometimes ethnic minorities. But the problem is there is, of course, there is little geographical depth in that position. Because they have not learned it from school, and they just are tolerant. They have not learned it in the family, and they are just tolerant at school, and there is no interaction between these two. You see, for example, in India, when students leave secondary school and they go to a secondary university, they lose their faith because they have not been prepared for a theological understanding of their position in a context that is more threatening them. It's a belief that is more on the social level, but it's a literal, deep personal conviction. That's number 4. That's the image that RP made of it. You see, these are people, they have a straight way, they have their own belief. Not every day, the direction is clear, God is at the end. At the same time, you see that they know there are other people, but they do not interact. They leave them as they are, and they just go for their own fruits in a very tolerant, peaceful way. Look at these tendencies. That's a tendency of formal tolerance, high relativism, and high literal belief at the same time. The same pattern. And look for India, for example, here. Leadership in India would have this, like school, but also a colorful school. And that is in a context where Catholic religion is the majority religion. Numbers, staff 15% this year, leadership 10%, 11% in the formal intolerance convinced position sports tendency. The recommendations here is that we use the context of the Catholic school to support the student to grow from an inheritance to a more appropriated state by nurturing their spirituality, by cultivating authentic dialogue. And for this tendency, it will be very important to engage parents and families, potential partners also in that faith development. Between the school and home, which is often also in Australia, of course, especially about middle-class families, often provided context. 5. National in Belgium. You see that's very popular, I think, for the whole of Europe, a very popular stance. It is still a little bit a post-critical belief, but it has shifted into relativism. You can see. So it's like a slippery slope. You can also see it's like shifting away, increasingly towards relativism. These people would distance themselves from the ontological reference of faith and God. On the left side, they would prefer a generic religious literacy, but it lacks personal engagement, personal conviction. It very strongly embraces plurality and diversity. And then it's often in a dangerous way Catholic elements of contemporary culture in a way that is not always theologically very sound. The position that we now take the whole Catholic system. Look, that's the image. There is not a cross in the center anymore. There's a lot of symbols, that all create a meaning, and in the middle is not God. Christ is the individual who chooses his or her own preference. Mild relativism, pluralism, the colorful school. Have a look at the data for Australia. You see that 16% of the staff is there, 30% of the school leadership, 11% of our teachers. So this is another pattern of thinking. Here is relativism stronger than post-critical belief. Have a look. You see, it's a constant pattern. Relativism is stronger than post-critical belief, and people prefer a colorful school with no preferential reference to Christ over a dialogue school. You see it also happening here. That's the tendency of the tendency in Australia. It's much bigger as we see it happening in the European context. The recommendation for this group is that they should try to build bridges between the more secular and the more believing school community members. They could be invited to deepen their religious engagement by nurturing a deeper theological understanding of the Catholic positions. These are relativists and pluralists. They exist in our Catholic school. Mild relativism. And 6, and the last tendency is the secular tendency. You see them on the right side, on disbelief. These are people in our Catholic schools that hold a relativistic and secular position, tending towards disbelief. They have little appreciation or will even resist the mission of the Catholic school. They have a subjectivistic worldview in which individual autonomy is central. They look with a more humanistic and a transcendent lens to the Catholic school identity. They are tolerant towards believers, but often from a perspective of intellectual superiority. That's the position. We have secular people who teachers in the school. So our Catholic anymore, completely not. And if you look into the data, that's quite, it's fine. yeah, confusing. So not necessarily leadership, our e-teachers in leadership positions, but 22% too. And of your school staff, is 22% of your e-teachers is also there too. Yeah, so if you look at this pattern, you see that relativism is very high, and critical belief is dropping down almost into the negative. Colorful school, of course, not a colorful school, and do not want to recontextualize the Catholic Church. They want they want secularization of the school, and line with their community's belief. As it's tendency to have to deal with them if you have them in your and you have them in our Catholic schools. In the first place, I think we need to invite them to engage respectfully with their traditions, and we should present to them a more sophisticated understanding of the Catholic faith, because very often it's based on a very simplistic and literal understanding of the Catholic tradition, which then consequently rejects. Sixth tendency, second. So I come to a summary and try to answer my research questions or the six tendencies, and have them also in another view. So you see, the PCB of critical belief is very strong among school leadership and our e-teachers in leadership. Half of them are there. You see, it's less strong. It's also less effective. You see, and the blue is the secular one, which is very strong, and then the other four tendencies are less strong for the moment. If you would do this in other continents, you would have complete other results. So at this moment, I have students from the 5 continents and working with this. And it's a world conference, so I can say something very quick about this. So in India and general, the wrestling is at the power province. How they have to deal in relationships and the Asian religions in which they are in Europe, of course, which is the first one, the secular and the mild religious. I see that in the United States, there are a lot of discussions about God openness. In African schools that we have analyzed, the school is often the bedroom. But depending on the context in which you are, you will get another combination of these 6 trends. But of course, the challenge that we have to confront dealing with this diversity Catholic school. Again, it's tendency most scripture passage on us. A PCD believer has deep roots and open hearts. The story is the road to Emmaus, where Jesus appears and disappears. The garden openness is the idea, come and see Jesus at the wedding in Cana, where he gets into the public doing a miracle. Nobody understands it. Garden openness, literal belief stands in place. As an example, the tolerant convinced says, I have my faith and you have your faith. It's like the discussion of Jesus with the rich man. They go their own way. To say, the mild motive is called between worlds. This reflecting and contemplating and not engaged, if you want, and the secular is truth is what you make of it. symbolic thinking, tolerant convinced people foster intercultural dialogue, mild relativists theologize with them, and the secular people interviewed reasonable in this book. So these are the different right now for Australia. The strength are you have an excellent leadership. 42% demonstrate political belief. And even clear theological vision, which is country too. So that means, in fact, that they have small, mature faith people with high theological sophistication that will be a broader direction, grounded in faith integration, and the whole idea is how can you keep that up in a secular context, as it has been described by others here in this conference. The critical challenges for Australia Catholic schools is we have a secular presence of one side, especially among your teachers. We have that paradoxical phenomenon of the tolerant convinced that compartmentalize their literal study at home and their real decision at school. You have the slippery slope of the mild relativist, kind of transitional instability in the system. And finally, we see a population gap of 22% between on the one hand the RE teachers, and on the other hand, the other 31 teachers that are only there for PCB. And what I want to say as a critical challenge is that you risk to get, and it's often in Catholic schools the case, that you have two distinct cultures in your Catholic school. On the one hand, you have those with a highly theological sophistication in leadership systems. On the one hand, and you part of your teachers struggle how to implement and how to integrate that on an operational level. And so the whole question will be how these will be brought together. And that's why we developed the Catholic Dialogue School to inspire everyone to enter into dialogue, not with each other only, but also in the tradition and the God who reveals God's self within that tradition. Everyone of these things have something to contribute. So we have not to say we have to exclude, but the critical believers can bridge the gap between faith and culture. Those with God and openness maintain the traditional continuity. The guardians of the ontological reference. The common convinced and the gap with the pluralistic worlds. The non-relativists will excel in inclusive pedagogy. That's the motto list. I would not advise that they write a mission statement, but then it will all be about inclusivism and not about class anymore. The set of teachers contributes to professional excellence, with secular families, and constantly will challenge the plausibility of the Catholic faith. So they can also have a positive contribution to constructing a Catholic school today. So what is now the mission for the future? I would say that Catholic schools have a living dialogue. We have not to choose for Catholic dialogue school. Catholic schools so I think it should be seen as places where faith questions are welcomed, not feared. It should be communities of unity with legitimate diversity. It should be laboratories of contributing states. And there could be businesses that it's possible to live in a plural secular society to have a sophisticated Catholic identity that is need for. So I think it's an opportunity. So the teaching diversity should not be seen as a problem that we solve, but a reality that we should embrace wisely. With patience, with a compliment, with mutual respect, experience complexity, with both confidence and humility. Confidence and humility needs to go together for the future. I have to answer, and my 45 minutes are almost.
Yes.
Now, supporting a Catholic school of dialogue, our definition of what is a Catholic dialogue. It contains a clear Catholic identity and mission while fostering genuine encounter with contemporary plurality. It seeks in this encounter to renew a Catholic faith tradition that are both theologically legitimate, essential to the tradition, and culturally plausible. Also for young people, realistic, and contemporary society. I think that's the dynamic of the Catholic dialogue school at work. At 43%, which is improving FPCB core of Catholic identity, and showing deep roots, the openness to the world, welcoming, inclusive, only 57% is authentic diversity. And the real connections, the Catholic state should try to find an answer to that is credible. Each tendency contributes to a recontextualization of the Catholic tradition. Legitimacy. Secular colleagues test the cultural plausibility. And between are navigating that tension between the text of the tradition and the context of identity. And I think that this diversity and Catholic identity including this. And there is the calculation, the also total model and cultural accumulation. Final slide now, and I will give you back to the floor. The Catholic dialogue tool is a community by excellence that reviews the Catholic faith. And the sixth tendency shows that Catholic schools are already today now living boundaries of neither withdrawing in chronological imposition, nor embracing relativistic conflicts, but communities where the Catholic tradition remains the organizing principle, the privileged perspective, while engaging authentically with diversity. And I think if we accompany people across all these tendencies, the Catholic school can do what political belief wants to embody, a Catholic space that speaks fluently to contemporary life precisely because it wrestles honestly with real perspectives while maintaining its theological legitimacy. Thank you.
This is what you could call a permanent master class. Did you are a man of all seasons? Your PhD was dealing with Holocaust and then learning about the Holocaust. You was a powerful vice rector at Catholic University of Leuven. And we are leading together a critical experimenting on how to cope with attacks from government on reducing religious instruction in public schools and unfortunately also in denominational schools. So thanks again for your loyalty, but thanks definitely for the chance you gave us to be informed as a primeur for the very first time with your updated research. Quite impressive. We will make use of it. Well, we are running out of time a little bit. But I have just room for one or two questions, and then we will ask, but you will get those slides for the real meaning, because definitely it's so massive information that we will need some time. And you have the permission or the mission to post in a written form your questions. And we did not have the conversation before, but he definitely will be willing to answer your questions if they are written and sent to the secretariat of the conference. And he's very accurate. We know him for quite a long time. So he will respond to your questions. And of course, the full text will be published in a book. One or two questions. So, yes, Roisin, quickly, and then your colleague. Yeah, okay. Then three, but can you, unfortunately, be short? Yeah.
Very short. First of all, I don't know what time I'm here, but I'm contributing for 25 years your work, and I'm sure it's going to so many people. So it's lovely to hear this new today, and you're students to critique.
Yes.
And so I think that for some people who don't know the recently has done about this, the ideological approach to education, some people say that it could unintentionally blur the lines between interpretation and fiction. So not everyone buys into this. And I don't think there's another question. I think I'm aware of other perspectives. I was just
Correct the question. Yes, please. Sister, thank you for the I would like to know a little to listen to you a little about what to do for you community studies, especially the word community. What does it mean for you to recommend Thank you very much for this excellent presentation. And my question is about when or how to understand your research if we come from another context where the region doesn't have the same place in society. I think your research is very connected to the phenomenon of social secularism here in Europe. And when we talk about the Catholic education, maybe it would be better to specify the context in order to be clear. Thank you.
10 seconds for each question.
Okay, yeah, very short. Cognitive belief class are just the structures, the formal structures with which people look to faiths. It's an abstract concept, and you have different ways that people use these dimensions in the way they speak about religion, and we can analyze. It's a topic from the psychology of religion. It's not found by myself. It's created by David Wolf and Leuven Dirk Hutzenbouts. I agree that there are different contexts, but at the same time, we have a universal Catholic faith. And what we do is we apply all these instruments and ideas. As I told you, my doctoral students come from the whole world to different contexts. And you need, of course, I agree, the context to understand how these patterns relate to each other. And it depends on a lot, for example, the relation between state and church will make that you have a specific understanding of Catholic school identity. And so we have seen that these instruments are universally applicable, but they reveal different patterns. And that's what they need to do if they would work empirically adequate. And the third discussion, yeah, that's a huge discussion, of course. The problem with post-critical belief is that it's a very vulnerable position. Like incarnation is also a very vulnerable thing to do. And for those people who are in literal belief, it's very easy to accuse post-critical believers of being relativists. Yeah, and that's in fact what happens. Just as at the same time, if I speak in the Belgian television, the relativist journals will put my post-critical belief and accuse me of literal belief. So someone who opens himself for the vulnerability of faith can be attacked by those with a rigor closed system, but also with those who are in a relativistic position. It's a position that creates wounds and vulnerability, but that's nothing else than what Jesus himself expected in his time when he told his message.
Okay. So, be not afraid, sending your question, your comments to the through the secretary. So, the staff of the conference to quickly to explain the location of each of the sessions.
Perché questo soggetto si deve chiudere?
Number one, yeah. Okay.
Question number 5 here. Okay. Two, two, number 5. Okay, after lunch. Okay. Number 2, in the left. Okay. In this level. After lunch, in the room, Papaluciani, session number 6. Session number 4, in Sala Papa Paolo VI, level 0. Session 4 in level 0, Sala Paolo 6. And section number 3 in Sala Capitano, level 2. Okay? Level 2. Ascensore come si dice? The stairs is in the left and the left. Okay? And the section number 7 is the same Sala Capitano, level 2. Okay? After lunch.
Giuseppe, do you have one person to talk?
Yes, in near the stage of the one person of the secretary for okay. And on the table there is a QR code with all the information. Okay. Thank you.
Back at 1:30. 1:30.
Della sezione come le regole
Can you help me get this? I'm trying to put this one on the screen. If you want to present, click on this. Sorry.
For the section number 1,
When you're speaking, I have mine on here. Yeah.
Mine is up there.
A huge opportunity to have election for this conference. But I guess the moderator to
Tina, we need to set the screens up. That's in here. Past.
What is
That was earlier. We just wanted to
are you speaker?
that can speak.
This is the first one. The first section here.
And this one here.
Okay, well, that's good.
I had it here a minute ago. Here's mine.
yes.
Document the project. The first speaker, I think.
Can they get? Is there a tech person here?
Do you want yes, if you could bring up whatever PowerPoints are.
That's mine.
Is it for this? Is it?
This is mine.
Okay.
How do I save it to that?
Yeah. Cut save.
Save to desktop.
No, we'll like to use this.
Yeah. You have a PowerPoint?
Oh, okay.
No.
Colleagues, I've heard a lot about you from colleagues at the University of Dayton.
Oh, how's that? Who's that?
Well,
Oh, she's
Tom. Okay. Friend and colleague of mine. Again. It is the No, it's okay. You might go ahead.
I believe we're having some technical issues here, but in the interest of time, we want to go ahead and get started. My name is John James. I'm from St. Louis University in the United States. I'm privileged here to be with two presenters. We're going to change the schedule, so on podium number one, it seems the first session.
Mayor Andrew Nikia is not here. In his presence, we have the Archbishop from Yaoundé, Cameroon. So we're going to start with Archbishop John, and then we will go on to my colleague, Professor Charlie Russo, afterwards. So Archbishop John, you have